we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do Rob's killer tier list for. We'll start off with power. I'm not gonna do fun or anything. We're gonna start off with just actual like power. Who I think personally is the most powerful. This is gonna be extremely controversial because if it's not controversial and if people don't send you hate mail after you make a tier list, did you really make a tier list? So here's what we're gonna do. We already have people fighting in chat. That's a good sign. First things first. We'll start in order. So we're gonna do S tier. This is gonna be super god tier killer, just really strong and powerful in almost all situations, and through add-ons can become even more powerful. We're gonna do A, which is a very strong killer that can usually do well. They might kind of require like 1 or 2 add-ons to be super competitive, but definitely not someone that you're gonna be seeing in a tournament, but someone that can succeed at a very high level in regular casual matches. B is gonna be a good killer. You can win with them, but they're not really the best. There's definitely a lot better out there, but they can still get the job done in most casual lobbies. You can still 4K with them fairly consistently. C is gonna be this killer kind of sucks. Like they're playable, but it's kind of hard to like succeed with. Like you can 4K, but you're gonna need this. You're gonna need help from the survivors, and they're gonna be bad. And D tier list is gonna be this killer is just literally unplayable. Like you cannot beat even average survivors in most games. I don't think I'm gonna have any killers in D tier list. Just FYI, I just don't see it happening. So let's start off. It's hard when you start in like the kind of middle characters, but we're gonna start them. So Pig. In my opinion, I think that the Pig is a better killer than most people give her credit for. And the reason that I think she is good is because she has a built-in ruin effect with the head traps. And if you play against the head traps really well and you kind of manipulate people into wasting time, you chase people away, you can get a kill with that head trap. The problem is, obviously, you do have to win your first chase. She is mostly a mouse 1 killer, but she does have her crouch to give her the stealth effect so that you can sneak up on people, get a little bit closer. Maybe if you get lucky, you can grab someone off of a gen. Her crouch power, I don't really think it's that good. It can shut down loops if the survivor stays at the loop, but what a lot of people don't realize about the Pig power is that if she crouches and you turn around and you W key in the other direction, you actually just get away and she can't reach you. I don't know if that's still true with her add-ons, but yeah, her like lunge power where she crouches and then charges at you is just not, it's actually not going to hit you if you just turn around and run. So that's kind of a dead power, but her stealth effect is pretty cool, and the hat is the real thing. If you get destroyed early game and they get 3 gens done before your first chase gets done, you're in a lot of trouble as Pig. Because Pig, you're going to need those early downs to get the hats on, to start applying pressure, slow the game down. Basically a built-in killer ruin. So for that reason, I have Pig being a B tier. I think she's viable. I think she's good. I think she's better than most people realize she is. She has some big problems. If she could shut down loops a little bit better, like if her crouch and then charge power was a little bit stronger and a little bit more effective, I think that she might be like a stronger killer, maybe get bumped up to A. But because her charge attack is not really that usable, like you have to really pull it off fast, catch them off guard, maybe like crouch without them seeing you, like behind a tree or something. You really have to be pretty sneaky with her, but I have her at B tier. Next up, I have Blight. Blight is not the best at dealing with loops. I don't know if you take Blight to like a god tier level, where if you have like a god tier gamer who's just incredible, like bounce, 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 don't think, don't aim, just flick shot every single thing. Maybe you can do all the loops, but my experience with him is that most players can't use him in most loops. So that's kind of a negative. He's not the best in loops. His positive, however, is that his map coverage is insane. If you're in a dead zone, he will gap close on you so freaking fast. Like, he will just get there, you know? He's very good at catching people out of position. He's good at catching people on generators. When you combine him with perks like Ruin, he's really good at pressuring multiple generators across the map using his high movement speed. He's also very good with perks like Tinkerer, where he can see a gen that's about to pop, he can get there very quickly, and he can capitalize on that. So I have Blight. I want to say Blight I also have at B. I want to say I also have Blight at B, yeah. The Cannibal. Now, the Cannibal used to be a C tier. But since that rework, my God. I truly think that Bubba is one of the better killers. If you try to loop him with pallets, you better drop that pallet. And if you're gonna drop that pallet, you better stun him with it. Because otherwise, he's going to eat that pallet with his chainsaw immediately, and he's going to get right back on you, you know? Due to the fact that he can insta-down survivors, if you get into a rough situation, you can literally camp someone out, and there's nothing anyone can do about it, because you can insta-down survivors, and you can also, on top of the insta-down, you can hit multiple survivors. You literally cannot force an unhook against the Bubba. If Bubba wants a survivor to stay on the hook, they're going to stay on the hook, and there's nothing you can do about it. The only situation that I could think of that you could get out of it would be if you were injured and you use like a med kit, like Styptic agent for the borrowed time effect, and then like borrowed time pulled someone off. That's the only situation where I could see you getting an unhook against the Bubba, and that's why he is the favorite of campers. So I definitely have Bubba in the A tier. He's not in the S tier because his raw mobility and ability to pressure generators is a little bit small. Like, he can't really travel from gen to gen, in my opinion. But his ability to capitalize and really punish, like, where he is on the map is insane. And this killer can just destroy pallets. Like, you get to the end of the game and there's just nothing left because he's already eaten all your pallets. The Clown. Sad day. I have mixed feelings on the Clown. I have very, very mixed feelings on the Clown. Clown used to be at the bottom of C tier, in my opinion. But I think with the new change, he is potentially promoted to a B-. So I would have him at the back of the B, the very tail end of the Bs. B-, maybe C+. I'm not sure. He's somewhere in this range now. With the change of him having the speed potion, he can now do a thing where he throws he throws his slow potion on one side and he throws his speed up he throws the speed up potion first. He throws that on one side, he throws the slow potion on the other side, and then he runs towards the speed up. And he gets sped up. If the survivor does the loop, they get hit with the slow. And he usually will get a hit out of this. So he's really good at shutting down loops, but he's still a standard mouse 1. His mobility is not really like that much better with the introduction of the potion. I still think he's a weaker killer, but he definitely got a pretty strong addition added to his kit there. Demogorgon. This guy's tough. He's not a good killer, but he has some strengths. It's really tough to rank him. So he does have a portal network where he can teleport across the map. So he does have a little bit of cross-map mobility. Unfortunately, survivors can interact with it. So if you have a really good like portal location, they can just kind of like delete it, you know? Mostly standard mouse 1, but he does have Shred. Shred is really bad against good survivors, but Shred can be used to create a 50-50 at vault locations where you would normally lose, such as Killer Shack, where the survivor has to decide between going through the window and trusting that he's going to fake the Shred, or turning and trusting that he actually is going to go for the Shred and miss. I think I would put Demo probably right here. I would say behind Blight and Piggy. I'm tempted to... I'm trying to decide, actually. Pig and Blight. Or I'm actually going to move these guys to C tier. I'm going to move them to C tier. I think they lack too much. Blight has a lot more mobility and a lot more consistent mobility, and Pig has a natural massive slowdown effect. I think they're just better. Yeah. That's what we're going to do. Next up, the Doctor. Now, the Doctor is a very interesting character. He doesn't have speed. Like, he can't really traverse the map very quickly. But his ability to shut down loops is pretty insane. Stealth is completely ineffective against Doctor. And his really only weakness is mobility. But he does have the ability to also screw with your skill checks. Most good players are not going to be affected by that. A really good, like, top tier Doctor will even game the Insanity so that he puts survivors to Insanity 3 to prevent unhooks. By using his Static Blast to send a Insanity tier 2 survivor to Insanity tier 3, you can't unhook, you can't heal, you can't really do anything until you snap out of it. So you can play some games and deny people and do some pretty dirty things with that. But his lack of mobility can be a problem because he is a mouse 1 killer. He can be sort of countered by people pre-throwing, and sometimes even though he shuts down loops, you still lose like a little bit of speed and catch-up, just because of the fact that you have to use your power to prevent them from immediately dropping it. Because survivors against Doctor will frequently drop the pallet pretty early, and the Doctor has to make a decision. He either tries to go around and do the loop where he has to use his power. If you keep running, he loses a little bit of distance on you, but not that much. And if you don't get shocked and you make it across the pallet, I mean, you kind of reset the loop. So there's some play, some counterplay, but good Doctors will usually shut down most things and learn their timings. I'm going to put him... I think I'm going to put him B tier. Probably... I'm going to put him at the top of B tier, and I think the reason why is because he's an anti-stealther. He shuts down stealth extremely efficiently, with the exception of lockers, but usually the lack of information is almost as valuable as the information you have. So if you have barbecue and chili, you don't see anyone, and then you use static blast, and you don't see anyone, you pretty much know that the survivors remaining are in lockers. So sometimes getting no information from his perks and abilities is just as valuable as the information you get. Because if they're not in your barbecue and chili range, you know that they're within it, or they're in a locker. If they don't get it by static blast, you know that they're either outside of it or in a locker. So sometimes you'll throw up the static blast, you won't actually get any hits, and you just open a locker and immediately grab a survivor. Freddy Krueger. The no perk 4K champion who has the most insane base kit with almost no, like, real downside other than the fact that he's a mouse 1. That's literally his only downside. Instead, he relies on mouse 1 for damage. This man has everything that you need. He has literally everything you need. Like, he can teleport to generators, which is insanely powerful. Like, the ability to teleport to a generator is silly when you think about the fact that barbecue and pop are both in the meta. He has insane add-ons for, like, slowdown. And he can really shut games down, because if you're not running Ruin, you are running Pop. Every single hook, you teleport to a generator, you instantly get the Pop, and then you get to start another chase. He has anti-chase mechanics once he gets you in his dream world, which eventually you will be in. And if he hits you, you become in the dream world. With the blood puddles, they'll slow you down, screw you up with that, so he can catch you in a lot of chases, because it's a pretty big hinder effect. And then he also has the dream effect, which in itself is a little bit annoying. It makes it kind of hard to track him. He disappears. He can occasionally play some mind games, maybe get you where you wouldn't before. And the big one is that because he has no terror radius, it actually counters borrowed time. So if you pull someone off a hook when you're in the dream world, they don't get your borrowed time effect because you don't have a terror radius. Or you're not in his terror radius, rather, even if he's right behind you. So it's kind of crazy how that effect works, but he's really strong. I think we're going to drop him in the A tier list. Note, we have still not gotten any S tier lists, and that's because I think I know 2 characters who are going to get put in that tier list. Ghostface. Ghostface. Characters that rely heavily on stealth can be hard to judge because it depends on the skill level of the players, how observant they are. It depends on the map. It depends on if they have spine chill. There's a lot of factors that can kind of go into that. Ghostface's ability to mark people is extremely weak. What his advantage is that you can actually 99 people and save the marks for later. So at the start of the game, before they figure out who the killer is, a lot of times you can 99 a couple different survivors. If there's 2 or 3 survivors together, you can 99 a couple of them. You can start chase just by running in your form, or position yourself so that you only mark 1 survivor. So after you end your initial chase, you have another survivor that's 99. That survivor may make a mistake and try to take a protection hit for another survivor. You can then tap your power on, tap the stalk key, 99 to 100 them, and then immediately down them for a down to catch them off guard. Sometimes that instant down can completely destroy their team, because if you get 2 survivors down, like 1 slug, 1 hook, sometimes you can just end the game directly, depending on how you play. So he definitely has some positives, but he is a strictly mouse one killer who is hard countered by the whole spotting mechanic. So if survivors know how to spot you and they know how to position themselves, or if a different survivor spots you while you're trying to stalk a survivor, you can get screwed by that. Alternatively, if someone is trying to hide and they look at you by mistake, they can inadvertently give their location away. So that mechanic has some give and take, but I have Ghostface being a little bit of a sadder end of the B tier list. I think he's a little bit better than Clown and Demogorgon just because his ability to stealth is pretty strong. But he definitely suffers from standard mouse 1 problems where his power, if your power doesn't work and you're not getting big power or big value out of your power, you're just going to have a rough game, you know? The Hag. Kind of some mixed feelings about this one. The Hag is really strong for all of the wrong reasons. I don't think that Hag is fun to play as personally. I don't really think she's fun to play as against. It's a lot about territory control. I look at her as sort of a much better trapper. She basically locks down areas, teleports, smacks people. There is some counterplay. I mean, if you bring a flashlight, I don't like how you have to just kind of get lucky and have the correct item that counters her. There's also some counterplay when she picks up a survivor to run through all of her traps and try to break them. But otherwise, she can be pretty strong because her camping potential is insane. She can go around the map and she can do things, and then she can teleport back to a location if the survivor screws up. She has some add-ons that make her just absolutely disgusting god tier, like Rusty Shackles, completely broken, completely absurd. Like, when I run that on Hag, you get so many free hits, just like teleport smack, teleport smack. Like, there are jokes about Hags that literally just, like, they keybind their teleport key to their mouse wheel, and they just keep rolling the mouse wheel over and over and over and over again. Because it, like, literally, like, her attacking thing is someone has walked onto my trap, immediately hit control, immediately hit mouse 1. I don't feel like that requires a whole lot of skill. A lot of her skill is about pre-planning and setting up strings of traps that you think survivors will run through so that you can teleport, hit a survivor. They run a little bit, like approximately 3 seconds. Wait till the sprint burst is up. Wait till you recover from your attack. And then immediately teleport and smack you again. She is a slower movement speed killer who has no real power other than her traps. So if she gets into a trapless area, she's not going to be able to down survivors very easily. She will get looped for a long time against most survivors who are not caught out of position. So she is pretty reliant on her power, but she can effectively shut down an area. If you have a central building in the map that has a basement and she gets a character in there, your game is pretty much over. So I have Hag, this is a little controversial probably, I have her being on A tier because I think she's incredibly strong, and I think the actual raw mechanics of her is not difficult. I think if you're smart and you have map knowledge, you can play her at an extremely efficient level, and you can destroy a lot of people by just teleporting and smacking people. And a lot of times, if you're playing more casual games, you will find survivors will just step onto your little trap, go for the unhook, and you get a free grab. Insta down. Anywhere on the map, you just teleport, insta grab. It's that easy. The Hillbilly. So the Hillbilly is interesting. He has been changed a little bit. He's really hard to use, but he has a extremely high level of mobility. He is one of the most, if not the most, mobile killers in the game. I think he actually might be the most mobile. I'm not 100% sure about that. But I want to say he's the most mobile in the game. So mobility, check that one off. He has the ability to insta-down survivors. Check that one off. If you can back grab people, just kill them in the open with a chainsaw if you catch him. He also has the ability to cut people in loops by feathering and by turning quickly at the start of your thing and just kind of doing quick turns and stuff. So he has anti-loop potential. A really skilled, really high-level Billy will be able to kill people. And he actually has been played successfully in tournaments against top-ranked players with some success. So I think I'm probably going to put him at an A rank. I'm not going to put him S tier, but I'm going to put him A rank. How do I... And actually, I think I'm going to move Bubba a little bit back. I'm not sure where I want to put him. I'm not sure where Freddy and Hag go, so we'll put him there. But I think the two chainsaw killers in the current iteration of the game are extremely powerful. Their ability to shut down loops and his ability of just raw travel is insane. I might put Freddy above Bubba. And I think Hag's okay being back of A. Yeah, I think that's good. Next up, we have Huntress. So Huntress, a lot of strengths. Obviously, she can hit multiple people. She can spread damage across the team. If she's super accurate, she can theoretically hit cross-map shots. There's a lot of things that the Huntress can do. The problem is there's also a lot of kind of counterplay against the Huntress. There are a good number of loops in the game that Huntress cannot hit you with a hatchet, but you can still see her. And I know I've talked about this a lot on stream when I play as Huntress. There are just a lot of areas where survivors know about them and they run to them. Not a whole lot you can do. And there are some parts where you're just not going to be able to use your power. And without her power, she's extremely, extremely weak. So you have to play her in certain areas, and you have to recognize that some areas you can't do anything about. The swamp maps, for example, the map where you go inside like the very large building and there's the whole like indoor area where you keep turning and it's like a square kind of. You're probably not going to hit a hatchet in that area. It's just there's too many turns. Same with the game. You can run a Huntress for a long time without even having a loop, just by doing like all of the rooms and running in like a loose kind of circle. So she has her limitations, but she also has her strengths. So if you play to her strengths and you don't get caught up doing bad loops, you'll be okay. She struggles a little bit with mobility, and she has no sort of speed ups or other ways of kind of catching people. But a good Huntress will be getting a lot of hits on survivors from distance and kind of making up with that fact, trying to end games as fast as possible. She also can hook camp from range. I'm unsure if I want to have her. She's like a B+A in my book. I might end up putting her back of A. She definitely is like strong, but I'm not going to put her in S tier because there's too much counterplay to her. She's somewhere here. We'll put her B. We'll put her B. I know that's a little controversial, but is what it is. Michael Myers. Well, this dude is like Ghostface minus the actual like stealth portion of it. He has to stalk people. It can be very freaking difficult to stalk people. Most good survivors are going to loop him and then crouch every single time he stalks or hide behind stuff. And there are some maps where he literally just can't stalk on. And unlike Ghostface, like you almost can't play him without stalking. Like at tier 1, he's literally unplayable other than maybe surprising people and getting them on gens. He needs his tier 3 to be good. And if good survivors aren't letting you stalk, it's just going to be a bad time. Can he be good? Yes. If they're bad and they kind of like give you free stalk. But against most players, like you're going to struggle to play as Myers. And good players are not going to really throw pallets or really respect you while you're in tier 1 or tier 2. they're going to focus almost entirely on preventing you from tapping your tier. Yeah, they're going to prevent you from sort of getting your stalk early to get to your tier 3. One thing that he can do is, like Ghostface, he can 99. So if you have an injured player, you can stalk them to 99. You can run up. You can slap the person down. And then after you hook them, you find someone else nearby maybe. You tap your 99 or 100 and you insta-down them. And you try to kind of chain the game out using maybe Infectious Fright or something like that. So he does have some positives, but he's incredibly reliant on stalk, and he's just a big dude. Like, it's hard to hide him. Like, you can hide Ghostface a little bit. It's hard to hide Myers because he's just, like, he breathes like he has an oxygen tank on him, and it's just, it's difficult. It's difficult, you know? I think I'm going to put him at C. I think he's a little bit behind Ghostface. I'm not 100% sure about that. Ghostface gains a lot more of the benefits of stealth, and he can use his stealth throughout the game intermittently, whereas Myers is basically the polar opposite of stealth when he's in his tier 3 and he's just rampaging. I think I can comfortably put him at C. These guys just don't feel... He doesn't feel as bad as these guys, but he's definitely... It's like this mouse 1 killer syndrome, you know? The nurse. Do I even need to go into this one? Do I even need to truly evaluate her? I think everyone knows that when you play her at a even very good level, she can be horrific to play against. She's a very high skill cap character, but when you're good, like, she's just gonna destroy you, dude. You're gonna get destroyed. She can guard like anywhere in like a 30-meter like radius. It's insane. She can guard a gen. She can chase a survivor. She can drop chase on that survivor, teleport back to a gen. She can chase a survivor while hook camping. She can guard like 3 gens while guarding a basement. Her mobility just makes her so insane, and the fact that she can teleport makes there almost no counterplay. She doesn't even play Dead by Daylight. Like, you're not looping her usually. I try to loop her because I'm an idiot. I think it's hilarious. But you really can't loop a nurse. She just teleports and smacks you. So I have her all the way at S tier as either the best or the second best. I'm not sure. We're going to address that debate in a second. But she's just absolutely busted strong. Very difficult to play, but if you can pilot her well, she's undoubtedly going to dumpster your team. The Oni, a personal favorite of mine. His strengths are pretty obvious. When he's in demon form, he insta-downs. He moves extremely quickly. He just chains slugs. He dominates, right? Like, he can be really freaking difficult to play against. His movement is just so absurd because, unlike Billy, he can move very like specifically and deliberately when he's in his charge. You can use strafing and different techniques with that to actually get really accurate, and then you get an additional cone that you can flick shot at the end of it, so he can hit a lot of different things. There are some loops that he can't do very well if survivors play them perfectly, but in general, like, he can shut down a lot. His map coverage is insane when he's in his power. His weakness, obviously, is the start of the game when he does not have a power. He is a straight mouse 1 killer with no power until he gets enough blood. So you have to make a lot of smart early game decisions. If you have a bad early game, which is entirely possible with some killers, you might be in some trouble. But he is so powerful that he can weasel his way back into a game. He can weasel his way back into a game just by getting chain slugs and using Infectious Fright. But it is important to mention that against high-level players, being a straight mouse 1 killer can lose you the game because you can get ran for 3-4 generators. You basically have to be giving up chases occasionally. So you have to be careful. You have to be careful. And if he does have his power and the survivors kind of switch to a more stealthy mode, you no longer get to see the blood orbs when he's in his power. So they can switch to stealth and wait you out if they want to. A couple different strategies that they could do with that. If the survivor runs at you and dead hards into you, you do miss, I believe. I don't think he can really do anything about that or turn or anything. So there's some like minor counter to it, but he's still an incredibly strong killer that can go from losing a game to all of a sudden having every player on the ground and just winning the game. He does get screwed over a little bit by Unbreakable. I guess Soul Guard if you're running a Hex. We're Gonna Live Forever is pretty strong against him as well. But it is hard to go and pick survivors up with the Infectious Fright in existence. Because, I mean, you're going to know where they are and you're probably going to chain your downs. So I have him being... I think somewhere here. I'm better with him than I am Billy, but Billy has his power from the start and the entire game, which I think is significant. So I think Billy is slightly better. I'm personally a much better Oni than I am a Billy, but I think that Billy is actually better, and I have seen Billy played successfully in some tournaments. The Plague. She's a very interesting killer. Very hard to assess. With her power, she is incredibly, incredibly strong. She basically becomes a, like, better version of Huntress briefly, with a little bit shorter range. She can chain, she can multi-down, she can put insane pressure out. She can use her power on gens to make survivors sick who use them. Good plagues will spread the illness pretty effectively. Survivors are oftentimes put in a dilemma of staying injured the entire game, or choosing to heal and giving her power up. Most survivors choose to just be injured the entire game and just beat her with perks. Given that Dead Hard is in the meta, it can make it pretty difficult to win as Plague. Thankfully, she does have kind of built-in mechanics to give her fountains, even if survivors don't cleanse. So it's not like she's completely powerless, as survivors would just never cleanse otherwise. Bad players on your team will get you absolutely destroyed against the Plague because they'll just keep cleansing and you'll get screwed over. But for the most part, like, Plague is decently easy to counter as long as you keep getting to loops, areas that you can run around. She won't be able to effectively put her Plague on you. And just try to avoid getting the Plague as much as possible. Being spread out is extremely helpful early game as well. So I think she has a lot of counterplay. She definitely has some upside. She can definitely kind of go on a rampage and destroy and get a game caught up. But I think I have her being back of the... Do I have her at the back of the B list, or do I have her in the C list? I'm going to put her in the C list. The reason I'm going to put her in the C list is because, much like Myers, she has a really strong transforming property, but you're largely out of control of how that transforming property goes. Myers has to kind of give up on chases and give up on pressure to build up his transform property. She has to have the survivors voluntarily decide to not be injured and to give you that power, whereas someone like Oni, for example, basically just has to injure people, which is a part of the progression of the game. So that's why they're on different categories. I have her being at the start of the C list. Pyramid Head. Oh boy. So Pyramid Head pre-nerf was a little bit stronger, because every single loop you basically would put your thing down and you would say, I am going to wait and see what you do. If you jump through this window, I'm going to use my power and I'm going to injure you. And if you throw this pout, I'm going to use my power and I'm going to injure you. And if you don't, I'm going to let off and I'm going to mouse one you. And it was very non-interactive. There wasn't a whole lot you could do about it. And he would just kind of down you. He also had the ability to override sort of flashlight saves, override sabotage, override, worst of all, Decisive Strike. Because that was the real reason he was played, because you can override Decisive Strike and get a free hook state and basically just force it through. So the correct way to play him would be you get your person affected by your power. If possible. Again, that requires them to voluntarily do so. They might choose to go down first, which is not necessarily what they're going to do. But you loop with your power down. You get them affected. You put them on the hook. You tunnel them after the hook. You put them in the cage to override DS. And then you go for the third hook after. And it's just gone. Dead survivor. Fastest tunneler in the game if you choose to play him like that. It's the reason why he's played it in tournament levels. So I actually have him at the top of the A's. He has seen a lot of success in tournament play, and a good pyramid head is just a problem. It's just a problem because he has the ability to shut down loops. He has the ability to force someone out of the game very quickly. He has the ability to instantly kill a survivor if they're on their third hook, so you don't even have to worry about like dealing with protection hits and things like that. He kind of neutralizes a lot of counterplay of meta perks. You don't have to worry about Unbreakable. You don't have to worry about DS if you're just killing them and putting them in a cage. So he can override a lot of the meta. Definitely a very, very strong killer. Deathslinger. So here's the part where I think it's going to get a little bit controversial. I have Deathslinger as being better than the Huntress. And I know that this is a conversation that a lot of people kind of might not have agreed with. There was a lot of back and forth of where people thought that those two killers were. I have him slightly better than the Huntress, and I have him being in the A tier. The reason that I put him in the A tier, basically by default, you're always going to be running Save the Best for Last. Like you're almost never going to play without Save the Best for Last. He becomes such an efficient chaser by the end of the game, where it's like it's very hard to counter him. It's similar to Nurse, where if you have a good enough Deathslinger, there's almost no counterplay. You basically have to pre-juke. You have to pre-juke his thing, and you just have to guess. You have to get lucky, and that's really what it comes down to. Like he mouse ones you, he recovers much faster, Save the Best for Last, and then he just taps you. There's no time to respond because there's no time to actually pull up the gun to aim. He just can instantly, he can quick fire it. So very little counterplay. He can grab you pretty easily. He can grab you through vaults. He can't grab you over pallets, but he downs you so quickly, and sometimes there's just not counterplay that it's hard to do anything because he's constantly downing survivors. His advantage over Huntress comes in the fact that he can instantly fire. He doesn't have a pullback time, so there's no counterplay. And more importantly, there are things where Huntress's hatchets can't go due to hitboxes where his can go. So for example, you think of every single map that has railing. We're thinking the game has some railing, and let's also say, for example, Hawkins Laboratory. Lots of railing there. Huntress can't do anything about that. I'm not even sure that if you throw it over the railing, you can clip their head if you perfectly place it. Deathslinger can shoot through those rails and hit you. He can shoot through boxes and hit you. Like top tier Deathslinger play will destroy you. So I have him in the A tier. The Spirit, I mean, let's be honest, it's the only other killer that's played at a competitive level. You know that's going to go in the S tier. It's just not fun to play against. Like she can go into the spirit world. You don't even know if she's in the spirit world. It's really like inconsistent of like kind of like tracking where she is and figuring it out. It's kind of guesswork. From the survivor's perspective, oftentimes you're taking strict 50-50s. Strict 50-50s. You have absolutely no idea. You're just completely guessing and hoping for the best. Sometimes you get lucky and you really screw her over and hurt her a lot, and sometimes you guess wrong and it just kind of sucks. So not a lot of counterplay. She can return to hooks really easily and hook farm you with perks like make your choice. Like I don't know. She's just really freaking strong. Played at a high level. You run Strider on her. She overrides perks like Iron Will, which are pretty meta. She has ability to down a lot of people really fast. She has some of the strongest add-ons in the game that buff her power to a level where she's just insane, like God tier. Easy S tier. The Trapper. I have mixed feelings about this. So the Trapper can be good. He can be good. I mean, whoever said that in chat, you're absolutely right. He can be good. He can do things at a very high level. But the problem is he is a straight mouse one killer until he sets up. He can be countered by survivors watching you and disarming your traps. He has some add-ons that can potentially counter that, but they're not really his best add-ons. Trapper's biggest weakness, by far, he is always going to be handicapped by one add-on. He's always going to have one less add-on than other killers because he, by default, is basically required to bring the bags. His base kit is way too low on the bags, and so you have to bring the bags. And that prevents you from running a lot of the stronger add-ons, such as the one to make your bear traps darker, the one that auto-resets, like his strong add-ons that you can kind of manipulate the flow of the game with. They don't come base, so you're already kind of brought into that. You have to divert a lot of your perks into slowing the game down. Survivors oftentimes will just W key, so you spend maybe early game setting up all these traps, and the survivors will know what locations you were. If the survivors have comms, you're basically screwed. It can be really difficult to play. His kind of counter is that, similar to Bubba, it can be difficult to get someone off a hook. If he successfully gets you in a basement, he can make it an absolute nightmare getting that player out, but I think that Bubba has a lot less counterplay than the Trapper does. He needs to get some love. I think that I would put him in B tier if he could hold more traps by default. If he naturally had the purple bag, I would put him in B. But the fact that you have to run the purple bag to make him viable, in my opinion, or you have to run a bag to make him viable, the purple bag really should be default, in my personal opinion. I'm going to put him somewhere in C tier until they fix that, and I do think it needs to be fixed. The twins. So the twins are a weird character. The twins and their strengths. If we're talking about raw effectiveness, the twins are actually very good. The problem with the twins is that in order for them to be good, you have to play extremely dirty in a way that survivors are going to hate you. The twins' strength is that they can be in 2 locations at once. Primarily, that Charlotte can be used to guard people on hooks, as well as guard hex totems, as well as guard generators. Whereas Victor is the slug machine. He can jump on people. You usually don't want to do that. You want to down someone who's injured and then keep using him and kind of channeling it. So as Victor, you want to down people, slug them, and then you jump on another survivor. That survivor can't really pick up the other survivor or start working on them yet. Then you get Charlotte over there. She can really screw people over. She's a lot stronger than most people realize, but her strengths come in camping and slugging, a lot of which is being in 2 places at once. I actually have her as an A-tier character. Unfortunately, she's a very toxic A-tier character. It's in order for her to be played at a high level, you have to play super dirty, and you're going to make the survivors hate you. It's just how she is, at least in my opinion. The Wraith. So the Wraith in his current setup is a D, in my opinion. But don't worry, this is not where we're ending. This is not where we're ending. In his current state, he is a D, in my opinion. Especially before you could see him. In his new setup, however, since he now cannot be seen at ranged. No, that's not true. He would have been a C. He would have been a C. Here's the thing. With his new buff, where he can't be seen, I actually think he is going to be in the B category. I think he's going to get buffed from the C to the B category. Not be able to be seen from quite a bit of distance, and with his new change, and again, I'm going to say this is after the change is what we're going to do. So Blight, we're also going to say we're going to fix his camera angle, which is a huge plus. He will be a lot better at being stealthy. He still gets his big speed boost coming out of uncloaking. Most importantly, he is going to have a very big speed boost while in his cloak. He's almost getting Windstorm as a base, so he's going to become a lot more viable. I think he will be low B tier, kind of surpassing the weaker killers and escalating that B minus tier. Before we go to the final, I just want to say it boggles my mind how one of the weaker killers in the game, who previously was the weakest killer in the game, had the most counters, like Flashlight countering him, stunning him. If he gets stunned in Cloak, it was like a longer stun. Like, I don't know why they gave so much counterplay to one of the weaker killers, but they did what they did. I think it's because he was one of the earlier killers, but he has a lot of counterplay, which is good, but it's just like, he of all people did not need that counterplay. Like maybe these two needed more counterplay. Okay, so now finally we have the Legion. Now the Legion suffers a lot of the problems that the Mouse 1 killers suffer. His strengths are in spreading injury, and I frequently see Legions injure a lot of players, get up Thanophobia, they slow the game down. Legions make games really, really long. The problem is that you then have to down people. So your strength is spreading injury. Your weakness is downing people and actually converting it into stuff. Now, the theory behind Legion is that you keep chaining your attacks on everyone, you break your power, you down a survivor, you put them on a hook, everyone takes that time to heal up, you go back into Legion's power, and then you get everyone injured again. They can't ever do gens because they're constantly healing themselves, and you capitalize, right? So, on paper, seems really good. The problem with Legion is that, in the reality of it, people just W key. Like, W key is a hard counter to Legion. If you W key in the wrong direction, he wastes all this time chasing, and that time healing and mending ends up being a part of just the standard chase. So he ends up losing quite a bit. His inability to down costs him pretty heavily. If survivors spread out, he's kind of just not a good killer. Because you let him hit you with the power. You don't worry about the power. You don't drop pallets. You don't worry about it too much. You just accept that him hitting you with his power is probably going to happen. It's probably going to happen. Not a whole lot you can do about it. You just play the game. You just do what you can. Hope for the best. And then once he comes out of his power, that's when you start playing for realsies. That's when you start hitting vaults. That's when you start dropping pallets. And he can't down you. He is one of the strongest pressure killers that can't do anything with it. He's probably one of the top 4, top 5 at applying pressure, and he just can't capitalize on it. So, unfortunately, I actually have Legion as being a C tier killer. So that is that's my killer tier list that I have. I have Nurse and Spirit being S tier. I think most people have Nurse and Spirit being S tier. I think that's very common amongst tier lists. I don't see a lot of people that don't have Nurse and Spirit on their own level. It's the reason they're the only ones that are played competitively. Pyramid Head, Billy, Oni, Freddy, Bubba, Hag, Deathslinger, and the Twins are the killers that I think are very, very, very strong killers. They might not be playable in most tournaments, but in most casual game modes, if you play them optimally, you will absolutely dumpster people if you play really well. There's limited counterplay. It's all of those characters. A lot of them do have counterplay, which is why they are not necessarily S tier. The ones that lack counterplay are mostly Pyramid Head and Deathslinger. And for the most part, they're very strong, but they're not necessarily as abusively strong. It's just the chase is very messed up. Their general lack of mobility prevents them from being the S tier. The B tier, you have the killers that can be very good. Their powers can have some really, really big highs, but frequently have some low lows. Huntress struggles in a lot of situations. Doctor can struggle in some situations. Pig struggles in some situations. Blight struggles loops. They all have certain weaknesses, and you can have a game where you just have a very, very rough game playing as them, especially Wraith at the tail end. This is going to be post-buff Wraith I'm talking about. And then in the C category, you have killers that are borderline gimmicky. They rely on things that are not particularly effective. I do want to say though, Clown, the jury is still out. He did recently, at the time of this video, get the yellow potion. There could be some new things to kind of do with that I don't know about, some tricks that might make him a little bit more powerful. I still think he is one of the weakest killers in the game because he's limited by how many bottles he can hold, and you kind of have to work around some components of that. I think that his general lack of mobility, other than wasting an offensive resource to gain mobility, makes him weak. I do think that Clown could be bumped up to the B category if he had a separate bottle count. Like if he had, let's say, 4 and 4. So if you didn't have to reload them all together, and you just had 4 of the poisonous and 4 of the speed boost, that's what I think he should be. And if they do that, I think he would be B tier. I think he'd be much better. I don't think they're going to do that though. But that's my personal tier list. If I don't receive hate mail and death threats based on this tier list, I will be surprised, because that's just kind of how tier lists go. And yeah, I mean, that's gonna be it. This is my opinion on the killer tier list. I try to take out my personal biases as much as possible. I do play Huntress and Oni probably the most, and I'm not good at, nor do I play a lot of Nurse and Spirit. I just know that they're objectively good when played at a high level. Some of the lower level killers I do enjoy, but I just understand that they're just not really that viable. But these are my opinions. You guys tell me what you think.